Hi. So after this amazing demonstrations of science and technology, I'd actually like to pause for a second and introduce you to a word. It's a really simple word, Ubuntu. It doesn't really translate too well, but it tries to capture some of what we're exploring here about learning. The idea is, I am me because of all of us, or my education and my development and my growth isn't something that happens alone. It happens by me helping other people to move themselves forward. It's an idea which follows a thread through some of the projects that I want to tell you about. But first, these guys. They're a real nuisance. In the last 10 years, mobile phones have just come crashing into our lives. They've influenced and changed how we communicate with people, where we communicate with them, when we communicate. They've created new types of game and entertainment, new forms of art. They're really impacting on all sorts of angles of our lives, new jobs that didn't exist. But strangely enough, they're struggling to make an impact on education. Well, this is actually happening, but it's happening on a more grassroots level from particular inspirational schools, much like a couple that you've heard about earlier today. It's called mobile learning. It's about taking the tools that are in your students' hands anyway and just seeing if you can't leverage that into the class and change the way that learning's working a little bit. It sort of tends to happen on a couple of levels. On the lowest level, it's just a fantastic Swiss Army knife. In here, I've got a word processor and a camera, and I can record myself, and I can make notes, so diary keeping. So it sort of fits the functions that are happening already in classes at the moment. But that's just the beginning. It's a bit like a lever for change. Where it really gets exciting, much like some of the examples you've heard about the schools earlier today, is where it starts changing how the teaching is actually happening, where it starts influencing and changing the whole dynamic. So learning doesn't have to happen in a class. It by itself becomes mobile. It starts to follow the learner around. If the learner's at home, the learning can happen. If the learner's in a class, it can happen. If they're out on a field trip, it can happen. So the learning is really following the learner, true mobility. And this is the bit that's exciting. If the kid sitting in the back of the class can look things up on Wikipedia, the old model of a teacher knowing all the facts is hardly going to work, is it? So again, the dynamic changes, and the teacher becomes a collaborator and somebody who explores with you. So most of my work has been in the UK, and it's not been with kids in schools. It's been in education, but it's been all the kids who haven't made it in school, or have dropped out, or have disengaged. It's young offender institutes, colleges, work-based training providers, this sort of place. And I'm a techie, I'm a software programmer, and we make software as tools to try and help engage. It works really well. But a couple of years ago, I met a fellow South African who was really enthused about taking those same ideas to really impoverished schools in South Africa and seeing if there was a bit of a transfer. And the project is called Ubuntu. And his idea was that if you could get a bag of particular bits of technology, install some software on it that helped you create and make and build things, that it could be a lever for change, an agent for change. Yeah, the education would improve, but the real value was in teachers collaborating with other teachers and trying to figure out how to deal with these unwieldy technologies and trying to fit them all in. So the Ubuntu idea, the idea that you worked with other teachers to try and build your own skills. And that was the exciting bit. So I've got some just quick snapshots. So kids going on their first ever school trip with smartphones, recording, interviewing, taking photographs. So this fits the Swiss Army knife model. Kids reading ebooks, but not just any ebooks. Ebooks they couldn't get hold of before. Previously, they were studying Lord of the Flies. They had 2 copies of the book in the entire class. But by giving access to ebooks, they found study guides that were written by teachers across the planet, which they brought in, using it as a word processor. So there was a computer suite in this particular school, but they get about 20 minutes a week on the computers, which isn't really enough time to get more than a paragraph through your essay, whereas here they're pre-typing in advance. But here's where it gets exciting. It starts moving away from being a Swiss Army knife and drifting into the realm of being a tool to create. These girls are a biology class, but they're building an app to test their friends' biology skills. So they're playing with the technology, they're learning the tech, and they're learning the biology, and they're putting their own information in, which they're going to test their peers, kind of collaborating, constructing some knowledge together. And this is where you really start to see this lever starting to change the way the class is working. Bear in mind, these South African classes are pretty sort of conservative in the way that the teaching happens. It's quite structured and quite rigorous. And finally, using the same tools, a bunch of local DJs, or these are students, they set up a local DJ scene and just trying out some of their creativity. So my thought for today is this mobile technologies, they're certainly there to stay. This mobile learning, it's certainly going to be impacting on the schools. And the trick is to just try and make the most use of it and try and lever it for good and to lever it to help point education in the right direction. If you do want to try it for yourself, these are the 3 top tips. The first one, bear in mind, it's a tool. It does stuff. Let your students make, create, build, construct. That's what it does best. Don't worry about pre-packaged, pre-existing, structured learning. Second one, it does go wrong. The first time it'll go a bit wrong, the next time it'll go a bit less wrong, the next time it'll go a bit less wrong. And actually it's that cycle, that iteration, where the real learning gains come. The students are learning, the teachers are learning, they're working together. And almost all the successful projects that have brought in these bring your own device type technologies have gone through this iteration, and they all swear by it. And the third, let the learners help you. They're experts. Let them develop the techie skills, let them be part of the puzzle. Works a treat. That's mobile learning. And for my pledge, I'm going to keep on champion using technology as a tool to change things instead of just a passive thing that you consume. Thank you.